So welcome to Black Feminism and Me/Maine. Before I formally introduce and address the intention of tonight's event, I want to start with a call to action. And perhaps this is something you have already deeply considered. But if not, I would like to encourage everyone to reflect on the land with which your memories and your being has been and is being developed on. Specifically, I implore you to acknowledge those lives that have cultivated and developed a deep connection and practice with Mother Earth. The University of Maine, located on Marsh Island, is the homeland of the Penobscot Nation, the indigenous people who continue to tend to and fight for the rights of the land and river. I want to take a moment to honor the members of the Penobscot Nation in the state of Maine and the Nanticoke Lenni Lenape Nation of New Jersey, where I am currently, whose generations of life, love, resistance, perseverance I recognize and support. I benefit and reside on this land that gave me opportunity to have memories and experience my own growth from the soil that the indigenous people expertly tended for more time than my brain can comprehend. And I want to call to attention the complexities of knowing and existing with this reality. I encourage the audience to learn more about their local indigenous communities' histories. Bell Hooks famously said, quote, "When we drop fear, we can draw nearer to people, we can draw nearer to the earth, we can draw nearer to all the heavenly creatures that surround us." And tonight, I have the pleasure of facilitating this roundtable dialogue with 5 heavenly women I'm honored to have connected with during my time in Maine. Amara Efeji, who's the Director of Youth Engagement and Policy of the Maine Environmental Education Association and a National Geographic Young Explorer. Kosi Efeji, Youth Hub Coordinator for the Maine Environmental Education Association. Dr. Lori Banks, Assistant Professor of Biology at Bates College. Dr. Samah Abdurraqib, Associate Director of the Maine Humanities Council. And Dr. Leslie Hill, Professor Emeritus of Politics at Bates College. Over the course of the semester, I have had the privilege of inviting you all to speak with me on a podcast project that will be released very soon called Black Feminism and Me/Maine, where we collectively covered a broad spectrum of topics such as intersectional Black feminism, nature, youth activism, and STEM as they pertain to Black feminist ways of knowing and being. Tonight's dialogue is an opportunity to once again have a platform to center and uplift the voices of Black feminists. For those of you who may not know this, tonight's event and the associated podcasts are connected to a University of Maine class offered this semester called Black Feminist Thought and Expression. And I want to extend a special welcome to the students of this class, as well as my co-instructors, Dr. Liliana Harakova and Mr. Kevin Roberge. I see you both. It's good to see you. I would like to take the time to address the folks watching this to say thank you for bearing witness to us, whether it's in this Zoom webinar tonight or once this recording is published. We are grateful for your compassionate listening as we unpack our individual understanding and personal connection to Black feminism. Before we jump into the questions, does anyone feel called to say a few words before we open the dialogue? Anyone of the panelists specifically? Looks like.
I'm just really excited. Thank you, Lauren, for inviting us. I'm just really excited to have this conversation. I know we have a set number of questions, but I just know that conversation is just going to flourish from there. So I'm excited about tonight.
Yeah, me too. Absolutely. Okay, well, let's get into our first facilitation question. So, what was your path to and through Black feminism, both thinking and doing, and how does it relate to your experience? And I'm going to throw it to Samah first.
How to go first? Thank you. So I love this question because I always love like an origin story. And I feel like that's what this question is. And so I think, if I had to cite a human being close to me, I would have to cite my mother who raised me. And she never talked about Black feminism in any kind of explicit way. I grew up in a house where we talked about Black politics and Black people all the time, but my mother was not someone who said, "Oh, I am a feminist. I am a Black feminist." But I guess I would say that she brought me to Black feminism just by example and from her the expectations that she set for me and the path that she imagined me walking on, and all of the literature that she introduced me to. And so if I were to cite a people or Black feminists who are not, who shaped my first learning, I guess I would say literature. Black women writers who shaped my imagination. So I grew up reading a lot of Virginia Hamilton, which really, all of her writing really helped me think differently about speculative writing, and the place of Black folks in the present and the future, and all of our, magical capabilities. And then I think about the Black feminists who shaped my identity, people like Audre Lorde, who I talk about all the time. I will not delve into Audre Lorde right at the moment. And then the Black feminists, the Black women who shaped my politics, like Angela Davis and Bell Hooks and June Jordan. So I think that's where like my root, my Black feminist root, that's where it comes from.
Sorry, technical issue. Thank you so much. And it also reminded me of the fact that I know everyone in this room tonight is going to ask if we can give a list of like recommended reading and people. And so I'm keeping notes for that inevitable question that always comes up. And I want to throw it to Kosi next to respond.
Yeah. So I guess for me, I've just kind of always been around super cool and inspirational Black women in my life. As a coming from, a big group of Nigerian American immigrants, just seeing the Black women in my life just do everything that they can to establish themselves and to make themselves seen and heard in a place and in an environment that does not want them to be seen and heard. And, doing so successfully, it was always really inspiring to me. And so, even without being conscious of that label of being a Black feminist, I still understood and, emulated the actions and the mindsets of the women around me. So yeah, that's what I would have to say.
And that sounds like a very dynamic introduction and experience because, not every, obvious, I hate that I even have to say this, but not every Black woman is the same. We don't all think alike. We all have different nuances that are to be celebrated and to be cherished. And I feel that. And I feel like just by knowing you, I see the multiplicity of, your sister's influence and, maybe some of your aunts and things like that. And it's just really, it's really beautiful to call to that and acknowledge that really. So Lori, Dr. Banks, sorry, you're next.
Yeah. So, oh, can you guys see me? There we go. Okay. My first best friends were my paternal grandmother, who was originally from Sulligent, Alabama. It's on the state line of Alabama and Mississippi. And her sisters and her sisters-in-laws, my grandfather's sisters. And so I came into this sort of pre-existing sisterhood, if you will, when they were all in their late 50s and early 60s, which I think is in sort of a magical point in a Black woman's life, where like all your cares go away, your respect for other people's expectations are gone, and all of those things. And so having them, you know, in my life very early, and being, you know, really good examples of resilience, and really kind of, you know, giving it to people when they tried to impose their expectations on these women, and the women being like, not today, Satan. Um, Definitely had a huge impact on me. Not just because they were fabulous in the kitchen, which is where my biochemistry training started, you know, but also realizing that as I encountered the world in my body with my hair and my skin and my curves and all of these things, that I really had a choice as to whether I was going to pay attention to other people's expectations of who they thought I should be or not. And so thankfully, you know, through these wonderful examples, of these women, I really obviously took the latter path, where it was like, you know, my beauty, my genius, whatever it is that I feel like God has imparted me with, doesn't really require your permission. And it doesn't require your understanding either, because that's between me and him. We got stuff to do. And so I have to say that's number one, where it started. But I'm really grateful for that I had that example of these women who had the lived experience, to really walk that in a way that, you know, in some of the days that they experienced, it wasn't super easy, right? But to pass on to me, like, look, we have fought these battles, so that you would have different kinds of opportunities. And especially because you have these opportunities now, we need you to go out there and, you know, kick some doors down. So that was where it started. Yeah. Northern Alabama, going down there for summer vacation, since I was raised in Seattle. But yeah, you know, at lots of kitchen tables, learning, you know, the Black feminist version of global domination, and it followed me.
Okay, I don't know how long the awkward silence lasted, but I just got my internet is unstable, which just reminds me that internet, access to water, having a computer, these are all privileges, and most other things as well. So I just tying that in there, connectivity issues, are first world problems. So thank you, Dr. Banks, for bringing us back to a sense of place in the South where you grew up, and also talking about how, you know, you're instantly connected to your family, who also help you connect to your ancestors and really give you the strength to persevere at any point in time, right? So Amara, you are my next person. Okay, Amara is having an issue unmuting her. Oh, there we go.
There we go. Awesome. Sorry about that. Let's see. Firstly, thank you everyone so much for sharing your stories, your origin stories. I know my face is going to be hurting at the end of this night as I smile. So I'm just so excited and looking forward to the rest of this conversation. As far as my origin stories, my path to and through Black feminism goes, as my sister mentioned, I'm incredibly grateful that I had the opportunity to be surrounded by really incredible Black women who were unapologetically and are unapologetically themselves in all that they do, who really served as a source for inspiration for me. especially in my most formative years, before I was 9. And then when I was 9, I moved to Maine, and that was a very different experience because a lot of these women who I had in community, they were several hundreds of miles away. And um, starting from age 9 through, I would say just about my years of high school, so just a few years ago, those times were pretty tough as I was growing into myself. And it felt like really for me a rediscovery of Black feminism because although I still had folks in my corner, I had less of those folks. And these, I didn't really see this embodied in the field or the passions that I wanted to pursue. So I kind of had to rediscover on my own, who are those folks that I could look to, turn to, who can be a source of inspiration in this work that looks like and has always continued to have a single narrative. A lot of these passions that I had. And so in my rediscovery of Black feminism in my middle school and high school years, I was so grateful to always have my mother as a constant. I don't think I can articulate in words just the profound impact my mom has had on me, the sacrifices that she's made, and her being the embodiment of what she hoped that my sister and I would pursue to follow your passions, irrespective of whatever barriers society says that you have. And also recognizing that you're the only person who can name your barriers. And if you name none, you truly have none. And she really embodied that so much. And I'm so grateful to her for that. Another person I really just so looked up to who I guess I attribute to my rediscovery of Black feminism is Councilwoman Angela Okafor, who is a counselor in Bangor and a really close family friend who has taught me that being the jack of all trades is, it's definitely something that is very difficult. Um, but it's also really amazing to be able to pursue multiple endeavors, and that Black women should not silo themselves to one area of advocacy or one hobby or one passion, that we are allowed to and we have the right to pursue multiple interests and passions as anyone should. When it comes to policy and specific scientific policy, I'm grateful for Ayanna Elizabeth Johnson, who is one of the leaders, the forefront leaders in the climate movement, and who's really inspired me to transform my lens from a scientific lens to a more social oriented lens when it comes to climate generation, solution generation. And lastly, I really thank the Black women that I have as friends who I didn't have opportunities to have friends who shared my lived experiences before I came to college, actually. And it's just in these 2 years that I've had these friends that it has been so refreshing to not have to code switch in conversation, to actually be able to like say how I'm feeling and people understand because they're going through the same thing. I can share my passions and it doesn't have to be, this is my struggle because of something. I can just say, this is my struggle and they understand it. So I'm so grateful for all of these women for being a part of my origin story when it comes to my journey with Black feminism.
Thank you, Amara. Every time you answer a question, I'm like, oh my gosh, you're so eloquent. Like, I can't. I'm like, it's so clear. I'm like, I wish my brain worked like that. And you mentioned you're going to be smiling through this whole thing. I'm going to be like trying to not cry and smile and like just forget everything because I'm so emotionally tethered to all of you this evening. I did want to just highlight something that you said that really sticks out to me as we think and talk about Black feminism. You know, it's more than just the theory that comes from incredible Black women who spend, you know, their entire lives writing and allowing other people to connect to their experiences, they meaning the other person and also they themselves. And I just want to draw attention to so many people who you've named that are both scholars and also just a Black woman existing. That is already enough to be in this tribe of Black feminism, excuse me. And so, Dr. Hill, you're the last but not the least person to respond to this first question.
Thank you, Lauren. And I, like as others have said, I appreciate the stories I'm hearing. What I'm getting is a way to think about the multiple paths through which we've come to our thinking about Black feminism. I hear echoes of my own experience and some of what others have said, but let me just say that my path into Black feminism started with reading, thinking, and talking about Black women's writing at Toni Cade Bambara's kitchen table. Kitchen tables figure very prominently, I think, in the connections we have and the learning that we've done. Fiction, essays, and poetry by Alice Walker, Toni Cade, Toni Morrison, Audre Lorde, Bell Hooks, Barbara Smith, Gloria Anzaldúa, and Tazaki Shange, and the Combahee River Collective, part of the early awakening, opening of my head to thinking about Black women's experiences, their presence in the world, and the particular ways in which we understood how the world operated and how power operated. Those 1980s conversations were my own adult version of the kinds of kitchen table talk I had witnessed as a kid among women in my family and in my mother's conversations with her friends, confidants, women I called my aunties. Often these foremothers were intentionally or not passing on stories of being a woman in their world, being good mothers and wives, surviving work and whatever the world threw at them, and of course, being healthy. Often the lessons were about taking care of self, of uplifting the race, and of protecting the family. Indeed, what I think now of as the patriarchal family. Later, I found theorizing by Kimberly Crenshaw, Patricia Hill Collins, and Black South African women activists. Legal scholars like Patricia Williams, scholar activists Angela Davis, Kathy Cohen, Paula Gunn Allen, Chandra Mohanty, Margot Okazawa-Ray, and Amina Mama. Their accounts and analyses developed my own feminist perspectives and ideas about Black feminism, about intersectionality, about global feminism, and ways of being in the world and enacting a Black feminist politics in our interpersonal relationships, in our communities, and in our world. So lots of ideas coming at me, processing things, trying to figure things out for myself. And as I thought about this question about path, it occurred to me to point out a couple of things that stand out. And one is that there's an ongoing process of the development of Black feminist thought, developing Black feminist thought. And for each of us and for us together, growing into our Black feminist perspectives. There's an ongoing process of learning to claim and to honor our womanhood as we engage in anti-racist struggles. The thing that stands out, I recall very vividly when I first entered graduate school, Angela Davis came to my campus at Atlanta University and declared very publicly that she was not a feminist. And look at where she is now. So you know, it's okay to think and to interact and call ourselves out on various kinds of things. The other thing that comes forward is from all of those experiences that I had, the thinking, the talking, the interacting, the activism, were the fundamental conceptual linkages, the symbolic linkages and word and cultural images, and the everyday practical linkages between racism, economic exploitation, and gender, sexist and heterosexist oppression. That they're in many ways one can see reflections of those, whether we're focused on one of those isms or another. The other thing about my path is that a lot of the thinking, the reading came, of course, because of activism. Some of it was electoral campaigns. The anti-apartheid solidarity movement was very important to me. Co-convening anti-racist feminist workshops in Charlotte, North Carolina, finding fellow learners until I entered an interdisciplinary undergraduate program, a graduate program, where I was encouraged to make race and gender politics the subject of inquiry for my own scholarship and learning. So reading, thinking, talking, doing, and all of that involved bringing a Black and intersectional feminist lens to the tasks I encountered, to the institutions that I've worked in. And as it relates to my experience, Black feminism helps me make sense of the world, how power is distributed, how it's reproduced, how it is or can be challenged in the world. I saw women doing it. I saw women envisioning how to do it. And it offers me space and guidance for thinking about my own ways to respond to it.
Always leave me speechless. It's like, there's too much going on in my brain right now, but I just really want to say that I personally feel the words, and the way you've just described your journey and your path is just very vivid, and also steeped like with some of the giants of the revolution. And I wish I could have, I wish I was 50, I guess is what I'm saying, at that age in my life where I'm at my peak. Yeah, so thank you, Dr. Hill. Okay, so our next question is, how does identifying as a Black feminist play out in your actions and choices? I've definitely, as Dr. Hill has been pointing out, have heard a lot of echoes of connecting to mothering, connecting to that community, connecting to scholars and the words of Black women. And so as I think about actions and choices, it reminds me of the ways in which, and this is just a personal anecdote, as I get older, I grow into being a version of my mother, and closer to her and more understanding of her than I was when I was, say, like 16, right? That's just my own personal connection to this question. But again, that we don't have to go down the rabbit hole of motherhood or mothering. But does anyone want to start by talking about how they identify as a Black feminist in their actions and choices?
Yeah, I'll be brave and start. So I would say for me, Black feminism has kind of shaped my mindset, just the way that I view the world in terms of both gender and race. And so for me, understanding the fact that because Black people are seen as the antithesis of white people, Black women, especially, are viewed as not feminine or unable to be feminine because of the fact that white women are seen as the epitome of femininity. And because of that, you know, growing up, I kind of did struggle with understanding my place as a woman, a Black woman. But I've come to realize as of recently that because those systems weren't created for me, then I don't need to even abide by them. I don't need to listen to them. I don't, I can disassociate myself with those systems because they're not for me. So if they're not for me, why would I abide by them? And so that mindset is just kind of where, my actions, my choices, the way that I identify, where that has led me. So I guess for me, that's just a brief overview.
No, thank you. I instantly, as you were talking, was thinking about hair, right? And the politics of hair, let alone the rest of our phenotypes that are now being emulated in popular culture. But yeah, I like that outlook. It's more hopeful. It's more hopeful than I feel like I am on some of my days where I too struggle with Eurocentric standards of beauty. So thank you for that.
Yeah, because it's just so, oh, I don't know if I'm cutting. Well, I'm just going to stay off mute now because affirming mouth noises, I've been making them, but I'm on mute. But Kosi, what you said is so, I just imagine that must have been like a powerful set of moments for you to like recognize that all of those systems and all of those standards that exist, like, that we don't need to map them onto our lives. And there are, there's like a whole lineage of people before us who have their own systems and standards. So I just think that I imagine that must be very powerful. So this question, I feel like it can just like keep unfolding and unfolding. But one of the ways that Black feminism shapes my actions and my thinking is that it helps me not leave any part of myself behind, right? So it gives me an opportunity to bring my whole self, all of my identities, to whatever the issue is that I'm working on or talking about or advocating for. I think it was, I'm terrible with quoting people, but I believe Audre Lorde said something to the effect of, that there is no such thing as a single issue struggle because we don't lead single issue lives. And I see her as talking about Black women, or just like taking the idea of Black feminism, Black folks just in general, just taking the idea of Black feminism and recognizing that whatever the particular issue is that is activating mainstream feminism is inevitably going to look different from the perspective of a Black feminist or a Black woman or a Black person. And so one of the things that Black feminism does is just broaden my thinking and allow me to bring all of my different perspectives to whatever the issue is. And now I'm going to stay off mute.
Dr. Banks, it looked like you were also. Okay.
Yeah, so it just spoke to me, I will say, where this conversation is going now with this question, because I, oddly enough, was having similar thoughts, right? So small backstory on this. A couple months ago, I have a research laboratory that I run here at Bates, in addition to my regular teaching duties, and COVID-related stuff my productivity had gone down because a number of students had to quarantine and such, right? So if you don't have anybody working in the lab, the experiments just don't get done. And so a really, really, really good girlfriend of mine that I went to graduate school with just inboxed me and was like, I feel like this is a cry for help. I've been trying to get back in the lab anyway. If I come up there for a week, can we just hash it out like we were in grad school again and get these experiments done? So she flew from Houston to Maine and was like, as long as you feed me while I'm here and I got somewhere to lay down, let's get in this lab and drink this coffee and we can get it done. And so in this fabulous experience of she and I, so of course we are children of the late 90s, right? We are in the lab, there's no students present. So we have all of the Lil Jon and the East Side Boys, T.I. playing in the lab and all of this, because it's me and Keisha, right? It's her name. And so in this glorious moment of us feeling ourselves and feeling our science, she said the most striking thing to me, and I just have not let this go yet, that had graduate school been like this, we would not have had the struggles that we had. And took it a step further and was like, who could we be and what could we accomplish if nobody was paying attention to our hair or the colloquial English that we used or our skin tone or the food that we eat or the music that we listen to and telling us that we should be somebody else? If we could just concentrate on the work, like what could we get done? And so that just obviously was incredibly profound of Keisha to say that. But I have sort of taken that as, you know, in this moment, particularly for she and I, who are in our late 30s, early 40s, right? In these really interesting points in our career where we're done with our training and we're, you know, starting to make the boss moves and stuff, what are ways that we can sort of inject this Black girl magic into the universe so that we are creating these environments and creating these spaces where people have just the freedom to be the way that they are. And if trap music helps you concentrate better than Bach, then go concentrate and do what you need to do. But, you know, in creating these spaces and environments where people can just be themselves and do whatever flows out of them in those moments. And so it's really neat to be at this point where I have the ability to create those spaces in my laboratory, in my classroom, or in some of the other advisory things I do outside of the college, to really give other people now the permission to be themselves. And so while it seems to be incredibly important for the people that I advise who are other younger Black women, it's amazing how like shielded everybody else also feels, you know, in trying to fit into this box where it's like, you weren't intended to be in a box. You were intended to do whatever it was you were created to do. And so it's really been interesting and fun to be at a stage where I can just make that happen, or at least give other people the perception that they can do that and like they're allowed to. So yeah, it's fun at this part.
Say, Lori, Dr. Banks, never in my life have I heard anyone say, feeling my science. Never in my life, but now I have, and I will probably never have to use it, but I hope maybe one day if I do some little, I might be able to use that.
Well, I'm hanging on to injecting Black girl magic into the world. I love that. But it also reminds me of something Loretta Ross said here in Maine a couple of years ago at a Maine Women's Policy Center conference. She talked about one of the radical healing, and that's a term that I've heard recently. But she was talking about envisioning and advocating for a world in which individual well-being, it comes from creating the kinds of social and natural environments that support everybody's survival and ability to thrive. She talked about, this whole concept of healing justice, where what we pursue and what we do in the world is about bringing healing. And if that means injecting Black girl magic into viral biology, Dr. Banks, hey, I'm all for it. It's wonderful to hear you talk about it. And it also makes me think that here's an example of something that I think goes on in Black feminism. And that is that on a personal level, like for me, it nudges me in the direction of claiming myself, claiming my own knowledge, claiming my own skills and abilities, and who I want to be in the world, and doing what I need to do to be well and thrive. So it means playing your music, shutting out the world, in order to do the things that are important to me to do. It's also, it reminds me of, Black feminism. It just, what you're talking about is putting Black women in the world in a way that says we're fully human and can make those kinds of contributions to the world. I love it. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Oh, Mara can't unmute.
Standby. Yeah, we're on standby. Silence is healthy too.
Okay, so I am gonna stay off of mute for the rest of the conversation so that doesn't happen again. Oh my goodness, I have the jitters. I resonate so much with what everyone has said. And really for me, what I feel as though it was embodied in, especially your response, Lori, was that the fear of conforming to like society's assumptions of me and negative perceptions of me as a Black woman was really holding me back. It was preventing me in a lot of different spaces. And I would say to some extent, because my personal journey is ever evolving, to a certain extent, not as much as it used to. It is still preventing me, but that is something that I'm working on. That's something that I actively check myself on, especially in scientific spaces, especially in academia. I was so scared of being or conforming to that angry Black woman trope. I was scared that I wouldn't live up to those Eurocentric ideals that you, Kosi, named, as well as Lauren named, that were literally never meant for me. They they have nothing to do with me. They just served as the marker to exclude me in terms of beauty. But beauty is not something that is one way. Beauty is how you carry yourself, the way you walk in the world. And because I was so scared of these assumptions, I was so scared of conforming to these negative perspectives that society had of me. I really did not allow myself to speak up or speak out when I was asked about my opinion. I would just really conform with the masses, even though I felt different ways, even though I felt this was wrong. Even though I felt as though maybe with some of the experiences that I have, maybe folks shouldn't say this, but I am as an individual scared of not having friends in a sense, because they will see me as this angry Black girl. They'll not want to sit with me at lunch, and that was a conditioning from a very early age. I would say probably 4th or 5th grade. That I could just allow people really to violate my personal space. Oh, Mara, your hair is so nice. I want to touch it. Just go ahead. and grab it. But you know, everyone has right to their personal space, to their personal bubble. So why should I have mine be violated? But I didn't say anything, again, because I did not want to conform to these societal perspectives of Black women. And it's really in my journey, my personal journey, that I've realized that I don't care. I really do not care, because people are always going to find a way to invalidate what I am saying, what Black women are saying. And that is not on me. That is not for me to stop what I am saying. It's not for me to stop walking the way that I do. It's not on me to conform. It's really on those individuals to change their perspectives and their mindsets. Because like anyone, myself and other Black women, we have a right to express our opinions and our perspectives without being vilified, without being put in our place, without being put in a box. So really what this has culminated in is myself, Amara, just being me, being unapologetically myself. And it's taken some time for me to get here, but I'm so proud with the progress that I have made in just being myself. As Lori said, just feeling my science or feeling my advocacy and my passions and growing in myself and discovering what I love and learn and how to especially advocate for what I believe without, again, that fear of being vilified. I think this is how Black feminism has played in my actions. I guess kind of as my journey through it as well. I would say that adds to the origin story that I'm kind of, I guess, illustrating for myself with our conversation this evening.
Mm-hmm.
It really seems like Black feminism is a way for us to articulate what we need and for that to be heard and listened to. And it doesn't have to be done in the dark. Like, we don't have to just sit, if you're in college, in your dorm room alone, like struggling, thinking, you know, I need community, you know, and it just, for me, it brings it, that point brings it back to the University of Maine and why it's so important to have spaces where Black people feel like they are enough and they don't have to suffer in the dark. And I'm really grateful that, you know, we have this event just as a testament to the fact that we're here in Maine, right? And we're thriving in Maine, and we're carving out our own spaces. And so that kind of, Leslie, yeah.
Finish your sentence.
Oh, no, you go. That's all good.
I was just struck by something Amara said, and I you know, the statement that people always find a way to invalidate me. People will always find a way to try to take the power away from the things that I do. It just makes me think of how invaluable community is, how invaluable our connections to each other are. And I have to say, I was thinking about one of these questions about what Lauren just referred to a minute ago, spaces, and spaces in Maine, where we can find community, where we can find companionship. In Maine, I find it in friendships, in encounters and conversations with people engaged in activities that support gender and racial justice. I met 3 wonderful sisters, one of whom is on this panel tonight, during a grant making process for racial justice. I mean, it feels like a bond that is with me, even though I see them sporadically. Outdoor Afro and the Third Place are important spaces for me for connection with BIPOC folks. Black Girl in Maine the archive is a place where I can find some grounding, you know, somebody who's, you know, doesn't make me feel like the thoughts that I'm having or the reactions I'm having to something are from out there somewhere, but really they're grounded in a experience and perspective that is validated. And I find it when I challenge myself to learn and to think about something new or in a new way, like hearing people talk about their different paths and their experiences and the things that influence them. That's another space where I feel as if it's a space for me to grow. So, finding those communities, finding those conversations, finding those connections that validate my experience, but also challenge me in a way that helps me grow, think perhaps differently. Those are very special to me.
Yeah, I'm thinking like the validating experience, and like I always turn to Black folks and Black women to help me confirm and affirm whatever I think of as the truth. And so like thinking back to Leslie, when you're talking about that grant making experience that we had together, I can remember being in the meeting, the very first meeting, and meeting, and working with these 3 other Black women, and then and having my own like Amara, everyone always thinks that I am angry, and a lot of times I am angry because I have every right to be angry, like if someone tried to touch my head, I am angry. Don't violate my personal space just because you have some sort of curiosity. So yeah, sometimes I have every right to be angry. But anyway, so I have my own, I'm a very direct communicator. And so people tend to think that means that I am angry at them or hurting them deeply. And so I can remember at the very first meeting, I'm like trying to process all of the things, this grant making process, something I'd never really done before. And then, but didn't really know the 2 other Black women well. And then I was at a farmer's market in Portland, and one of the people who we have been sitting around that table, maybe like, this is maybe the second meeting or whatever, she was there with her partner, and she just kind of pulled me aside and she said, I was watching your face during the meeting. Tell me what you really think. And I was like, yes, you want to know what I really think, because I don't know. I just think that I just always find that, I guess I'm thinking back to, I don't remember who it was, maybe Kosi, maybe Mara, who was talking about just finding a community of Black women when you're in college that help affirm you and help you who know you in some sense, so you don't have to code switch, so you don't have to think to yourself, do I want to say this thing that's on my mind right now, or do I want to wait for a little while, and so that people don't immediately think that I'm being, aggressive, or, all that stuff. And in that moment at that farmer's market, when she came up to me and she asked me that question, I was like, oh, all right. Yes, I'm so happy to be at that table with you, and with the other 2, with all, with Leslie, you, and the other person, So anyway, I just I had written down the word truth when you were talking about being invalidated. And I just think that's probably an experience that all of us have had, especially those of us who've gone through any kind of institution. Grad school jacked me up just like it probably jacked everybody else up. So anyway.
Yeah.
On that note, oh, Kosi, you go next.
Yeah, I just wanted to talk about something that Samas said. I saw your face during that meeting. I just wanted to point out the collective look that Black people can give each other and just instantly know, because that's my favorite form. That's my favorite type of formation of a community, to be to be honest, in all seriousness. I love being in a space with my sister, because even if we're on a Zoom meeting, I can just look down at her little square and know exactly what she's thinking. With the 2 Black female friends that I have, we can just look at each other in a room, in a class, when we know that there's something going on, that someone is saying, that we're like, have to cock our head, open our eye just a tad bit. Just to recognize, I see you, I understand that this is not something that is right and is justified, but I'm here and I am sending you brainwaves in solidarity.
Mm. I don't know whether, I mean, like, it's so true. Everything you're saying is so true. And I don't know whether to be genuinely happy or genuinely sad that I'm right in the middle, right? Like, but I want to keep it positive. I don't want to keep it negative. This event is positivity. And we've already kind of been speaking about this thus far, but the third question that we have for tonight is, how do we find rich spaces to grow in our Black feminism, in our homes, our communities, and in our relationship with ourselves? And I really think about both community and then self. You know, sometimes it's really hard, especially with everything that's happening in the world, to be okay, right? And sometimes it's okay to not be okay. But how do we, again, find joy, find people, right, who can help remind us that there's always some, maybe it's through spirituality, but there's always some beacon of light, piece of hope, when we come together, that can maybe not like fix, but alleviate a lot of the tensions and difficulties we experience. And so I don't know if anyone feels called to respond. I know Dr. Banks and Amara, you haven't gotten to talk about community yet, so.
I can go ahead with that one. I actually had sort of a interesting experience thinking about this as we were preparing for the evening. That in my mind, I'm sort of at a place, sort of what I talked about before, where I see myself as having a unique perspective, where I have the opportunity to pour into other people, and sort of sprinkle the Black girl magic, right? But in a way that helps sort of decolonize one happy experience at a time. So I think that, and we sort of talked about this during my podcast episode, that there's a lot of things in the world that try to rope Black women into co-signing on colonizer behavior, where it's like, it would be easier for me if, so from the perspective of the spoken word piece that I presented, it's a conversation between a Black man and a Black woman. As a Black man, you know, they go through these experiences where it's like, I'm sort of halfway to white manhood. And so I need to be able to control things, or I need to be able to get to this level of success that has been dangled in front of me. And the best way that I can do that is to control you. So, like, help me feel empowered by co-signing on this colonizer behavior, right? Or it would make everybody feel better if you could just straighten your hair. It would be better, or make everybody feel more comfortable if you didn't speak so directly, right? These kinds of things. And so within the information that's being communicated through these microaggressions, it's like, who you are is not okay. What you're doing is not okay. And not only that, but it is your responsibility to make me comfortable the way that I want you to make me comfortable, even if it puts you out of sorts, which I obviously completely reject, right? And so not only just for me to be able to resist those things and say, no, you can take me as I am, or you can walk, but also, to build environments or put forth this energy and this thought that that colonial mindset was never the jam. And so we need to deconstruct that sort of one piece at a time. So whether it's in the way that I choose to manage the students that work in my lab and treat them as humans, and show my colleagues that that's an appropriate and sustainable way to manage a staff, and that you still get really good results and publish high end papers and all of these kinds of things by being nice to people and feeding them pound cake occasionally. I think that's the best way that I can sort of push this idea that we don't have to be so competitive. We don't have to have this idea that being successful means that I'm stepping on other people, which I think is a lot, that has been born out of this colonial mindset. And so for me, sprinkling the Black girl magic is just sort of deconstructing that. And in the spaces where I have the agency to do it, make sure that I'm presenting this alternative way of being, so that people hopefully will catch on to that and say, I don't have to be mean to people or talk down to them, in order for them to produce what I need them to produce. It's a whole different way of thinking about this, that's more productive, and it doesn't tear people down. And I think that's, sort of the better way to do it, but to just live it out, so that, that's my way of bringing it to the world.
Lori, what I hear you talking about there is the both and. I hear you talking about the critiquing colonization, critiquing the colonization of the mind. This, and what other folks have talked about, the imposition of these norms and standards based on a white heterosexual middle class male ideal. And so making sense of how that imposes certain things on all of us, and at the same time responding in a way that says, here's my innovation, here's my creativity, here's my Black girl magic. It's the both and that I think is really powerful. I think it offers something that we don't often see, and we don't see enough of in the world. And I think Black feminism is a source for that. Both the individual claiming of self and doing what you need to do, what I need to do to be well and active, and on the other hand, providing a touchstone for the vision you want to create of a different world and a different way to be in it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think an instrumental part of that too, of being able to sprinkle Black girl magic, is also I'm thinking of like almost Tinkerbell, but there was actually a Black Tinkerbell now that I think about it, but from when my sister was younger, and the fact that I don't know her name bothers me. But it's transforming people into Black girl, one word. I'm thinking of Robin Boileron, who we've been reading in this Black feminist class, of creating Black girl allies. And what does it mean to be, I think it takes more than allyship. I think it takes a sense of love and being a stakeholder. That sounds very capitalist, I'm sorry. Being connected to the prosperity, the joy of Black women and girls, right? Brittany Cooper defines Black feminism as her love of Black women and girls, period. That's all that it really is, in her perspective. And I completely agree. And there's a question in there somewhere. I'm so sorry. And my dog's also running around eating photographs. So I'm in a bit of a pickle. If someone can extract a question from what I was just saying, that would be wonderful.
I don't know about a question. Oh, wait, let me see. Was someone else about to? Amara, were you like trying to come off mute? Okay. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Iridessa, that's her name. Thank you. Was it Kosi or Amara? Kosi. Iridessa.
Kosi.
Thank you.
I looked at Kosi. I appreciated Iridessa. I appreciated Aisha from Winx Club. All of the Black movie characters, all of the Black girl movie characters and TV show characters, I just want to say had a profound impact on me personally, because I never saw that as the protagonist. So yeah, Black Tinkerbell and all of them. I also I also thank them for my origin story, I guess. Um, so to kind of go back to the question of finding rich spaces in community, I recently had the opportunity to hear Dr. Ayanna Elizabeth Johnson speak. And I asked her a question that it was not anything related to her work, but really about her experience as a Black woman in academia, in science, and in policy spaces, about how her identity has influenced the way that she's moved through these spaces, and I guess the communities that she's in, who don't necessarily embody or represent the mixture of identities that she does. Um, and she responded to me that it was not the response I was expecting, nor was it the response that I hoped for. That sometimes one just really needs to play the game, and it is unfortunate that that is true. And I thought about it for a long while. I actually, I was supposed to be doing some work because the panel was in the evening, and I just kept thinking about it, about playing the game, about not necessarily conforming, but also being wary and like recognizing and maybe laughing at a joke that you didn't think is so funny was the example that she gave, things of that sort. And I thought about it for a while. And I also recognize my personal experiences of really being in spaces where I was the only one who held the mixture of identities that I did, being in communities that I was the only Black woman, and feeling uncomfortable in that, but continuing to play the game nonetheless. And I think my primary motivator for playing the game is hope, is the hope that through my presence and my existence, that other young Black girls might be able to find those spaces and might be able to speak their passions in maybe an avenue that they were not ever expecting or intending to. And that when it comes to who they see, that maybe I am one of those spaces that they see. And we can kind of build a community in ourselves. I think that this for me is something that's really important. I'm really grateful for the work that I do, that I direct our youth engagement work. And I have an incredible young Black girl who's one of the fellows for our youth network. She is so awesome. And she is absolutely incredible. And anytime we're on a call together provides me with so much hope. And I am the only, I want to say I am, but I'm not anymore. It's the thing. I was the only person who held my mixture of identities in the work that I did, and now I'm not. And that feels so great, and that is so inspirational, and it's so hopeful to me. And if I hadn't, I guess, played the game in a sense, then I wouldn't have that connection. So although I don't, I think playing the game is hard, playing the game is difficult, but I think sometimes it is necessary. It's living in that uncomfortability of, okay, I am the only person. I recognize that is not, that's not saying that I will change who I am. I will still be unapologetically myself, but I am recognizing that it is me who is here, but also it is the hope and the opportunity that your face and having other folks see you, maybe who, again, didn't expect themselves to be in that avenue or that area, that you can really find community with each other, and build a larger community with yourselves as well.
Oh, Mara, to be a Black woman and a trailblazer in any kind of field is like I just, my heart is just swelling for you, because it is such a mixed burden and a blessing, as you just articulated. And I think that I recently came to know, not personally, just like to know she existed, and I've heard her do some talks, this large carnivore ecologist. Her name is Dr. Ray Wynne Grant, and she's like amazing. And I don't know of any, so she deals with large animals like bears and things. And I think that, my time has passed, but if I were, I'm 45, I'm not going to become a large carnivore ecologist, but if I were like a young person and I was able to see someone like her or someone like you, it would have, maybe it would have made my science heavy past stick in a different kind of way. I was pre-med for a long time. I don't know. Maybe it would have made it stick in some kind of way. And I am so grateful that you are in the positions you're in, and in the places that in the spaces that you are occupying. And just think about all the people you are bringing with you who some of them are present, like this young person, but then some of them aren't there yet, but you're making so much space for them. And that is beautiful. And so thank you for that.
I have to say, as you were talking about playing the game, my critical Black memory, which is a term that I encourage everyone to look up because I think it's the coolest thing ever, and I talk about it all the time now, went to several spaces. So one is the actual action of pressing play on a song by The Game, which again, or like 90s, mid 2000s reference. He's a rapper. His claim to fame is How We Do. And it's the soundtrack that's going on in the back of my head as I think about how instrumental it is to play the game to change it for the next generation. And that's really what all the generations before us have been doing. They have been playing the game and they have been slowly changing it. And we benefit from their work, and we have to now work ourselves to continue this change, to push towards equity, equality, liberation. And I also wanted to, I'm just reading my notes, I'm so sorry. I want to also mention the fact that it's so important that we can bring our whole selves into spaces, right? To be a scientist or a doctor, it does not box you in this one type of being and thinking and knowing. You bring your black feminism, like the bag that you carry into the supermarket, with you, because now no plastic bags in Maine, which it should be everywhere. You bring that with you into every space, and you can not just bring it, but you can show it off. You can have those multiplicities be acknowledged, appreciated, recognized, and lead, right? Lead the field that you're in into its next iteration and dimension. Yeah, I felt really called to say that, just because I want this conversation to never end. selfishly, but people have kids. I have a dog, a hot dog who's destroying my house. Not to say
Can I
we're
just, oh,
we're
okay.
not. You go, Sama.
I just want to, so I just want to also say, like, there's another piece of this in terms of thinking about Black feminism, how it can nurture community and nurture ourselves, that I just want to make sure that is out there, because, you know, while we are talking about how potent our Black girl magic is, recognize that we live in a very, very white state, and there are very few Black people, very few Black women, and tokenization is real. And we very quickly all can get very, very exhausted, right? I mean, if you're not in Maine, you're in New England. It is exhausting because, just Amara knows this. Just I'm a person who likes the outdoors. I am a volunteer leader for an organization called Outdoor Afro. I am not someone who does anything around the climate crisis, the environmental justice. Not really. That's not like, I'm still learning, but I don't know how many people see that I do outdoors things, and then like, please come talk to us about environmental justice. Always. And I always go, do you know Amara? I didn't know Kosi, but now I know Kosi. So I don't say, do you know Amara? Do you know Kosi? So the second that they see any of us and see like, oh, wow, they are articulate, they can speak some words, they want us to be on things. And so the impulse I sometimes have this, I'm gonna speak for myself, I guess. Sometimes have this past had this very strong impulse to be like, this, I have to correct this thing that's happening. I have to, that's what I would do. I would step into places and do, whatever, I guess, sprinkle the Black girl magic, but that is exhausting. And so the other thing that I think that Black feminism can teach us is about rest and is about caring for ourselves, because that is also revolutionary. And about saying no and deciding what spaces you're going to put yourself in and what spaces you don't have to. So, I mean, I know, Amara, you're talking about playing the game. I hope that at some point, I'm not 50 yet, but I do like whoever said that when you're 50, you can just stop caring about things. I'm not 50 yet, but I do feel like I feel like I care less than I used to about playing the game, I hope. I want to read a quote from, I think I brought this up in our podcast, Lauren. Alexis Pauline Gumbs wrote this beautiful book called Undrowned, Black Feminist Lessons from Marine Mammals. And it's in very short, digestible vignettes. And it's really beautiful. And I have this quote, and I write poetry, and I took this quote from this book that she wrote, and I use it as like the introduction to a poem made up of different haikus that I wrote. And she writes, quote, and what a celebration when we realize that our survival need not make us into monsters. And you can interpret that quote all sorts of different ways, because there are words that are on a page and they're up to our interpretation. But I like to think about that as like the sweetness that we all need and that we all deserve, because of all the things that we have experienced from being Black women and being in high demand when things go awry, and maybe you can fix it. So I just want to advocate like rest, relaxation, finding, regrounding, all of those things. To me, that's also, Black feminism has also taught me that.
Yeah, just speaking about teachings, being the youngest on the panel, I'm just able to see, myself in all of you, and just hoping to be, just as powerful and just so able to be so comfortable with yourself, you know, I want to see myself, I want to be that way when I'm at all of your stages of life, because I'm still only 17. Especially as, you know, you all talk about your experiences in higher education, as I am starting to, you know, come into a little bit of contact with, because I'm starting to apply to colleges right now as a senior. I'm tired already, and I and I've barely gotten any college decisions yet. And so just being able to see how you all navigate this jungle of a world called academia is just so incredible to me. And I just admire all of your contributions to the game, and um, making the game a lot more tolerable. So um, young Black people like me are able to step foot in these spaces and feel seen and feel heard and feel like I'm able to actually make it. So thank you.
Oh my goodness. I was like, when is the waterworks gonna come? Right now. That's when they're coming. Oh my goodness. I just echo that. I'm literally only 2 years older than my sister. Well, 2 years and 7 months. And so um, I am excited for next week. I'm stepping into my second decade of life.
Oh,
And I'm so excited, especially with this conversation, um, because I I've I'm really proud of the personal growth that I've made, and the recognition of my value and my worth, and not discounting it. And having heard from all of your perspectives and your experiences, I'm so incredibly excited to take that insight into my second decade of life, and to learn with that and to grow with that. So I thank you all so much for your vulnerability, offering up your stories so that I may learn from them. And again, as Kosi said, making this walk a little bit easier for the generations behind you.
Thank you, Amara. Leslie, did you want to?
Yeah, the I'm just full right now because of so many of the things that you all have been talking about. I want to pull a couple of threads, and one begins with the conversation that all of us have been having about self-care, the importance of self-care, and the ways in which Black feminism orients us to take care of ourselves. And I have to ask the question, for what? And my own riff on that is not only for our own survival, not only for our own to nurture our own creativity and innovation, but also to envision a different world. Kosi, you talked about entering the academy and you know, being concerned about whether or not you could survive and finding the touchstones that will help you do that. I will also say that by doing that, you also can make a mark on that place. You have a right to make a mark on that place, to help whatever place you choose to go to imagine differently how it can be. And so, as somebody who's got a couple of decades on you, I would simply say, and to all of you, because Lori talked about the ways in which she does it in her lab, and I know in other spaces as well, just to leave your mark, to claim that, and to say, people, there's a different way to be in the world. Out of Black feminism, we draw the strength to be able to put something new in the world, put something more productive, more generative, more positive into the world. So be aware of that, claim it, and do it, honey.
It's so true. You're so right. And we do it knowing that we are connected to one another and to all of the Black feminists that come before us. That's why we do it. You know, I don't know if I don't want to like abruptly just go into concluding remarks. I don't know if anybody else wants to say anything before we have to go. Okay, well, I'm deeply grateful to all of you women here tonight, the esteemed panelists who I have the privilege of calling my friends now. I hope that's okay. We can talk about that offline. I'm 99.99% sure we're all friends, if not closer at some point. I want to thank my incredible co-instructors, Liliana and Kevin, for being instrumental in making this event happen and believing in me as like a personal side note. Thank you to the Hamm Campus Activity Fund for sponsoring this event. It really means the world to really, I think every single student of color, if I can speak for them in this moment, that a program like this can exist at UMaine at this time. I want to thank the UMaine Alumni Association for hosting the webinar tonight. And finally, thank you to the viewers of this event for your compassionate listening. I hope that you have a safe and healthy holiday season. Okay, good night, everyone.
Good night.
Thanks for joining us.
All right.